We're going to start questions with Mr. West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, also ranking member, and thanks to each and every one of the members of the panel for being here. You know, we just came off of 2 weeks being back in our districts, and again, the recurring theme when you go out and you talk to everyone, the three top issues: access to capital, regulatory environment, and tax policy. And as you know, we just passed a budget out of the House here that said we would look at personal income tax rate, condensing those 6 tax brackets down to 2, 25% and 10%. And of course, the Ways and Means Committee will look at that cut line. But my question to you, because as you know, if we're talking about lowering tax rates, that means we have to get rid of deductions and eliminate loopholes and things of that nature. And for Subchapter S LLCs using the personal income tax rate, my question to you then, if we take it down to 25% or maybe 22, 23%, what are the 3 deductions that you see still need to be retained for small business owners and for that personal income tax rate? You want me to play the Jeopardy music? Toot, 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 toot. Okay.
Under the misconception that deduction is a dollar for dollar. The other aspect, which I personally take umbrage with, is the term loophole. Congress passes the laws. There are no loopholes. Everything is in law. What a loophole is the unintended consequences of the law that gets passed. So if you want loopholes, there are plenty of unintended consequences that are built into the tax code that I and my fellow practitioners really have to deal with on a year-to-year basis every time Congress passes new tax codes or updates the tax code. And as people say when they say to me, well, if you go to a flat tax, won't it put the accountants out of business? And my answer to that is every time Congress passes a tax act, it should be subtitled the Accountants Full Employment Act for that particular reason, because we then have to implement and make sure all of these aspects are enforced. So as far as the 3, I would leave the charitable donations. I understand the issue of mortgage interest. I also understand the issue of real estate taxes, which is really a state issue as well as a federal issue. And of course, that's where the states and the federal government go back and forth. Those are the 3 that I would definitely keep.
Anyone else on them?
I would have to echo the keeping of the mortgage interest deduction. Right now, that is critical to keeping the home building industry going. We would see a devastating effect, as I indicated in my testimony, and that there's been a lot of misperceptions about the mortgage interest deduction and who gets the advantages to that deduction. But housing production would fall off significantly. But what you also find is that not only do we create 3 jobs for every house that's built, there's tens of thousands of dollars that go back into the local community, the state, and the federal government from the taxes and impact fees that are created for every home that's built. So the more we can incentivize home ownership to a reasonable level and a sustainable level, we think that's appropriate.
Anyone else? Because I only got 2.
I'll have to defer to my accountant.
Well, last question then. Do we really need to have the death tax? Especially when we consider the fact that we're about to take it from 35% up to 55%, and we're about to bring that minimum qualifying amount from $5 million down to $1 million. Is this something that will absolutely crush the small businesses? And if we look into the future, 3, 5 further down the road, do we really need to have a death tax when it comes to small businesses?
As a practitioner, and I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, but this is what I do for a living. As a practitioner, the inheritance tax, that money's already been taxed twice. It's been taxed once as income, and it's been taxed also on the dividends and interest that result from the investment of that. Now you're going to pass that burden on to the next generation, and there are tax avoidance schemes that are looked at all the time to try and avoid paying the estate tax. It's interesting that you bring that up at this point in time, because I'm working on an estate right now where the estate, the owner had passed away, and his wife now may have to sell the house in order to pay the estate taxes. Where is she going to live? What is she going to do? She's 65 years old. She can't work. She doesn't have any means of employment. She was going to use the assets from her inheritance to be able to live comfortably for the remainder of her life. You tax that, where is she going to go? Where is she going to live? So as far as the estate tax is concerned, I think it's confiscatory, and I think it serves a negative purpose regarding the amount of money that is generated to the government.
So that's a no. Yes or no?
I think it should be, done away with. I think there are there's a lot of research showing that there are a lot of businesses would be affected negatively by the tax.
Ms. Dorfman?
And even looking, I believe there was the challenge originally with the farmers and the land that they inherited as it was passed down to the generations, and a family farm having to be sold. It's a small business. So
yes or no?
So I forget how you crafted the question, but
should the death tax be maintained, or should we
no death tax? That's the way to say it.
We agree it should be eliminated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.